Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 171, Heading to the Northern Border 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. You know you can do better than that. If you're afraid of hurting me, I don't think that'll happen so easily. Minato spoke calmly, dodging the arrows piercing the ground and leaving small holes behind. Hanabi stood at a distance, aiming her bow, nodding at Minato's words. She quickly began infusing chakra into her arrows, which started to glow, surrounded by a green wind swirling around them. She then took aim, focusing on Minato with her Byakugan, her concentration tightening her bowstring to its maximum capacity. Minato exclaimed, barely reacting in time. He quickly jumped upward, using his reflexes just before a high-speed object shot directly to where he had been standing. The ground shattered and exploded in the next moment, prompting Minato to kick the air to escape. He landed far from the dust cloud created by the explosion, looking at Hanabi in astonishment. This is her full power. Incredible. It's like a B rank or higher jutsu, Minato murmured. After all, that girl had launched just one arrow and caused a massive explosion. Even though they had been doing missions for months, they had only been infiltration missions, which didn't require explosive jutsus, so he had never seen Hanabi's true capability. He saw her drawing two more arrows in succession, aiming at him with precision. Hanabi swiftly released the first arrow while already loading the second. The first one flew instantly towards Minato's position, exploding on the ground once again. The second arrow was heading his way mid-air, and he tried to catch it with his hands, only to feel the sharp wind and pull back his hand, which was now marked with small yellow cuts on his skin, indicating he had been injured by the wind element chakra infused in them. Truly powerful. He couldn't help but comment a second time. Hanabi was now preparing 3 arrows simultaneously, making Minato look up. She's going to launch 3 at once. Minato murmured, watching her infuse wind chakra into each arrow before setting them all on the string and shooting them directly at him. Quickly, Minato cut his finger with his other nail and started forming hand seals, slamming his hand on the ground with a summoning-type jutsu. In the next moment, an enormous gate erupted from the earth, rising with a demon's face carved into it. It was immense, drawing attention even from the distant camp that saw the massive gate in the forest. Its 2 tusks on either side, positioned like ears, clanged together, emitting a thunderous sound with the impact. Hanabi's projectiles collided with the gate, causing explosions all around, and the impact echoed through the forest. Minato hadn't left Konoha without receiving an S-rank jutsu from the Hokage after everything he had done for the village. His jutsu talent spoke volumes, as he had only taken a day to master unleashing the gate jutsu. The technique caught the attention of several people at the camp, including Jiraiya, who was watching from a distance. That brat! He even learned this! When did he get that jutsu? Jiraiya murmured, surprised, not knowing how shocked he would be when he learned Minato's response. I tried several times, but I couldn't do it. Only Orochimaru had managed. He couldn't help but think. His sensei had tried to teach it, but only Jiraiya had succeeded. The explosions began to subside as the 3 arrows impacted simultaneously, but the gate remained standing, though it was cracked when the smoke cleared. Minato sighed. Well, at least this jutsu is pretty useful, he commented, looking at the gate. But that jutsu has the power of an A-level technique. It's incredible. Hanabi, observing the effect of her arrows, seemed a bit frustrated. That was my strongest attack, and it was stopped by that jutsu. What kind of massive gate is this? She murmured, with a mix of frustration and surprise. But that didn't stop her. Hanabi drew 2 arrows and began aiming at the side of the gate, able to see Minato behind it with her Byakugan. Minato couldn't help but widen his eyes in the next moment as a wind projectile slipped past the side of the gate, beginning to curve and advance toward him. "She can even do that," Minato commented as the arrows exploded where he had been. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared near Hanabi, using the Raijin to teleport to a kunai he had left nearby. Hanabi noticed this immediately and shot another arrow at Minato, who dodged and quickly threw 2 kunai at her. Hanabi used her bow to defend herself, deflecting them as they cut through the air around her. "Raijin," Hanabi murmured, seeing the 2 kunai fall with Minato's seal, and quickly took action. She then performed a jutsu, storing her bow, and suddenly, a stone platform began to rise from the ground, using a Doton jutsu to elevate her while Minato observed. "So, she mastered this jutsu," he murmured, smiling. It was a technique Minato had encountered on a mission against IWA 3 months ago, where the enemy ninjas launched a platform of earth into the sky, remaining suspended for a while before falling back down. He hadn't been interested in it and passed it on to the only Earth-style user in his group. Hanabi couldn't exactly fly, but she gained a certain advantage by rising about 50 meters. She quickly began drawing more arrows, imbuing them with wind chakra. The first arrow exploded above Minato, who emerged from the smoke, dodging the next one and then the other in succession. At one moment, instead of retreating, he advanced towards the sky, kicking the air, evading all the arrows that tried to reach him until he arrived at Hanabi's platform. She had no choice but to engage in close combat. Minato was greeted with a strike from the Hyuga clan's palms as Hanabi enveloped her hands with chakra in the form of tigers, trying to hit him. Minato quickly dodged the initial strikes and launched a kick, which Hanabi blocked, and the two began exchanging a series of blows while falling through the air. The boy couldn't help but laugh, seeing the girl's effort to try and hit him until he caught one of her hands and dodged the other attack. Hanabi didn't have time to react before feeling the cold blade of a kunai at her neck as the platform began descending. "Well, it looks like I won," Minato said confidently. She merely sighed, dispelling the chakra around her palms. "Yes, that's what happened," Hanabi murmured. Minato quickly lifted her in his arms, surprising her, as he prepared to land. He used Jeppo to land safely. "Now, wait for us outside, let's see how Makoto does," Minato said as Hanabi nodded and leaped away. Minato looked towards the forest, where he knew Makoto had been watching the fight the entire time. He even managed to catch the sound of her clicking her tongue, frustrated that he had found her so easily. She quickly started advancing, pulling shuriken and kunai from the seals on her wrists and throwing them at him. Minato moved, dodging the projectiles effortlessly. Makoto continued advancing, now forming hand seals, and started spitting fire towards Minato. He responded in kind, performing seals and launching flames against hers. The impact of the two techniques created a loud, roaring sound of flames that echoed through the forest. But Makoto didn't focus on that. She quickly cancelled her jutsu and threw more kunai through the flames. Minato picked up a kunai to defend himself, as a shuriken passing beside him transformed into Makoto herself, attacking him by surprise. Smart, using the transformation jutsu and combining it with the shadow jutsu, Minato praised, blocking the girl's attack and sensing more shuriken appearing. Makoto reappeared in a burst of smoke, and a battle between Minato and several of her clones began. Even the original crossed through the flames, advancing with electricity emitting from her hand, using the Chidori. It had been more than 3 years since she began training with the lightning element, and she could now perform an A-rank jutsu that Minato had taught her. Minato saw this and flipped to the side, grabbing the girl's hand with the Chidori and surprising her, redirecting her to strike one of her own clones, which disappeared the next moment. Makoto, however, quickly turned her hand towards Minato, unleashing uncontrolled lightning from her hand as the technique expanded. Minato was forced to retreat, feeling the light touch of the lightning, knowing it could have been much worse if he didn't have a natural affinity with the lightning element. Minato landed on the ground while other clones of Makoto tried to reach him. He began dodging and striking them, causing them to explode into smoke, until the original attacked him once more. They engaged in an intense close-quarters battle, exchanging blows rapidly. "Let's try this," Minato declared, performing a Chidori without any hand signs. Makoto also had hers ready. In the next moment, both collided with their Chidori, causing a massive explosion. Minato stood right in the middle of it after the initial burst, as everything seemed to calm down. In the following moment, Makoto appeared in the air, and several dragon head-shaped flames emerged with a roar. A series of explosions began, and Minato had to dodge all the attacks. Makoto watched the scene, trying to catch Minato, but he disappeared as she landed on the scorched ground, searching for him with her 3-tomo Sharingan. "He's behind me," she murmured, immediately hearing a loud sound from behind her. Minato appeared, holding a powerful jutsu, the Raisin Shuriken, and launched it towards her, making Makoto's eyes widen as she saw such a powerful jutsu advancing towards her without any means to defend herself. In the next moment, when she thought she was in real danger, the jutsu transformed into Minato, who grabbed her and brought her down, placing a kunai at her neck. "Looks like I won," he said, looking at the girl with a smile. "You scared me there," Makoto murmured, pouting. "As if I would actually throw a jutsu like that at you, Makoto," Minato replied, laughing as Makoto ended up with a small smile. "Come on, that was a great fight." "Let's join Hanabi and Sensei," Minato said, and the two began to head back. "Well done, kids. It seems you really are much stronger now and would beat that test we did almost 4 years ago much more easily. To celebrate, let's prepare something special tonight," Jiraiya said calmly. That night, they had a big feast, just the 4 of them, with Jiraiya taking care of the cooking this time. They talked about their expectations for the northern border, which was much more aggressive than the infiltration missions they were conducting in that area, as Jiraiya shared what he knew about the other battlefields. Afterward, they all went to sleep, as the next day they were up, ready to depart. They stood at the edge of the camp along with Jiraiya. "Well, I can only say good luck from here on." "I hope to see you soon," Jiraiya said, and they all nodded, but Minato had a different feeling as he looked at Jiraiya, as if they might not see Jiraiya again so soon. Minato knew that in this timeline, Jiraiya would encounter Nagato amidst missions in the Land of Rain, alongside his 2 companions, Tsunade and Orochimaru, and they would become recognized as the legendary Sannin. "Thank you, Sensei." "We'll see you in a few years," Minato simply said, leaving Jiraiya confused. He didn't even get to speak or express his thoughts about those words, as Minato simply disappeared the next moment, advancing in an instant along with his companions to the northern camp of Tsukumo Hataki. Chapter 172 Meeting with Might Due. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. Minato and the girls quickly made their way to Tsukumo's tent as soon as they arrived, authorized to report to the camp leader. "You're here." Team 7, Tsukumo greeted them, focusing mainly on Minato, whom he already knew, while reading the transfer order issued by the Hokage himself. The 3 remained silent. "All right," Tsukumo began. "You're a team of only 3 members, but we can still request an additional member to complete the team, not a jonin, since we already have one here. I'll transfer you to Camp 6, Tsukumo explained. "Camp 6? I imagine that's where Due is," Minato remarked. "Exactly. As the Hokage's rules are clear about you receiving exclusive training with him during your stay here, he'll be requested as your 4th member. After all, he's currently a genin, replenishing the camp and handling other tasks," Tsukumo stated, showing some interest in the man Minato mentioned as he reviewed his records. "Well." Minato made a strange face at this information but sighed and continued, "All right. Having him on the team will be quite useful, as long as we're not undertaking very difficult missions. Otherwise, I'd rather go alone on S-rank missions," he said, ignoring the dissatisfied looks from his companions at that moment, almost as if he were abandoning them. "Very well. We'll see about that. In any case, welcome to the northern border. You're also known for your achievements in the West, so I hope your presence is a great asset to everyone," Minato, Tsukumo said, offering a small smile. "Thank you, Border Commander," Minato saluted officially as the leader of his team. Tsukumo nodded, and they left the tent, with Minato not mentioning Kakashi, as it wasn't the right moment. They exited the tent and waited for the ninja that Tsukumo had arranged to guide them to Camp 6, located a bit further to the east. Commander Tsukumo had also offered them a chance to rest, but Minato declined. After all, they had just left the western border, and even after carrying 2 people for hundreds of kilometers, Minato was used to it by now, having strengthened his chakra reserves over the years, so it didn't bother him. They stood in the middle of the camp, watching everyone busy with their tasks, while some greeted Minato, and he engaged in brief conversations with a few of them after settling down in the camp with Kushina. It was at that moment that someone landed beside them, approaching with a smile. "Hello, are you Team 7? A Chunin approached, and Minato nodded in acknowledgement. "Great, well, I'll be your guide to Camp 6. Anyway," he said, stepping closer to Minato and raising his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Minato Namikaze. I've heard about your performance at the western border camp against Suna's forces and also about your rescue of your fiancé. It's good to hear such things on this battlefield," he remarked amicably, as there was gossip about Minato and Kushina being quite close, so it was natural for comments like these to arise. "Well, thank you. I just did what needed to be done," Minato replied with a humble expression, as if uninterested in that kind of conversation, having had hundreds of them before. The man nodded in understanding. "All right then. Let's go," the Chunin said, greeting Hanabi and Makoto as well before moving forward with them, leaving the camp and heading east into the forest. It took about half an hour before they finally reached the camp. As they ran through the trees, the man exchanged a few words, asking about the battlefield where Minato and his team operated. Minato responded by explaining that they focused more on infiltration and espionage missions, but they always ended up in some sort of combat. "Well, it looks like we've finally arrived. I'll just hand over the scroll to the local commander. He'll receive you," the Chunin said as they approached the main tent, where it seemed many people were waiting to speak with the leader at that moment. "Something wrong, Makoto?" Minato noticed the girl looking around, as if searching for someone. "It's just that, my father is the commander of a nearby camp," she said, appearing cautious about encountering an Uchiha who might inform her father of her whereabouts. "I see. I suppose this camp is only for the Uchihas?" Minato raised an eyebrow. "Not necessarily," Makoto replied and continued, "but, for the most part, yes. After all, he's the clan leader," she commented. "I see. Are you afraid of your father?" Hanabi murmured beside her, asking the girl with a curious look. "No, it's not that." Makoto murmured but couldn't finish her sentence before their guide returned. "Come on, he'll see you now," he said as they entered the tent. "Well, look what we have here." A man with dark glasses was sitting at the desk in the meticulously organized tent, dressed in Jonin attire with the village vest, and he greeted them. Although he had a rather reserved and common appearance, Minato could occasionally see an insect in the air, but not just that. He could sense thousands of them in the area with his haki, all hidden, showing that the commander of Camp 6 was a ninja from the Aburame clan. "I'll leave you then and head back to the central camp. It was a pleasure meeting you, Minato. Good luck," he said, taking his leave, while only Team 7 and the commander remained. The commander was reviewing some reports on his desk before turning to speak with them again. "You don't need to introduce yourselves, after all, I have all the reports on your team here. But, as a formality, my name is Ikari Aburame," he introduced himself and continued. "Your team hasn't acted much alone, but I must admit you've completed quite a few A and B rank missions successfully in the past few months," he commented. The man didn't seem as reserved as most of his clan. He spoke openly and clearly, making direct eye contact with them. "Collectively, that's very good. But individually, Minato Namikaze, several S-rank missions, classified as an elite genin. It's a bit modest for someone who can fight against Kages and even Jinchurikis at the same time," the man remarked, while Minato remained silent. "But I'm not surprised by this. Honestly, despite not expecting this kind of thing in my camp, I am indeed surprised by the fact that," he commented while turning to pick up a scroll with the Hokage's request. "The fact that you were sent here specifically because of a genin for some special type of training. Well, if those are the Hokage's orders, there's nothing to be done. In any case, you'll find who you're looking for doing simple tasks around the camp. You can release him, as he'll also join Team 7 with Commander Sakumo's order. And you can look for one of my guards near my tent to find out where you can set up your own tents later," I'll ask some people to organize that. Anyway, welcome to Camp 6. I hope we can work together quite well, he said sincerely, and Minato felt a genuine tone in his words. Thank you, Commander Aburame, Minato said as he left the tent, while the man only looked calmly before returning to his work, calling the next people in for the following audience. He was clearly tired of dealing with so many people, as he didn't seem to enjoy it. Do you already know where he is, Minato? Makoto commented beside him as they followed Minato. Yes, from the moment I entered the camp, I already knew his location. Anyway, let's go talk to him, Minato said, moving to the side, with his companions following him. Dewey was carrying buckets of water for the camp at that moment, 2 in each arm and 1 balancing on his head. Come on, Dewey. We need to prepare boiling water for the midday lunch. Get more water for us, one of the ninjas, waiting for Dewey, exclaimed. Of course. I'm on it. I'll show my youth. Dewey shouted enthusiastically, grabbing more buckets after dropping off the 5 he had brought. Look at this guy, always willing to do everything, isn't he? Oh, one of the ninjas commented, laughing. Of course I am. After all, this is training for me. I'll carry the buckets upside down while training my arms. Dewey replied, smiling even as he heard his companions' teasing comments, while the ninjas in that group started laughing even more. Dewey! At that moment, a voice rang out, catching nearly everyone's attention. They turned around to see a group of 3 teenagers approaching, one of them being a Jonin. Dewey looked confused for a moment until he finally recognized Minato. He dropped the empty water buckets on the ground. Minato, he exclaimed, rushing forward to hug his friend, but before he could reach him, Minato stopped him and placed a finger on Dewey's forehead. No sticky greetings, please, Minato said with a smile. Anyway, let's talk, you're dismissed. Dewey gave up trying to hug him and looked confused. Minato didn't explain and turned to the other ninjas. Well, it seems you'll have to fetch your own water. I'll be taking Mike Dewey with me, he said in a firm tone. Hey, who do you think you are? One of the ninjas exclaimed, not liking Minato's tone, but he was interrupted by his friend, who placed a hand in front of him, stopping him. No, we shouldn't get involved in this, he said, while Minato nodded and turned his back, walking away with his 2 companions and Dewey, who kept glancing back and forth between Minato and the buckets he was about to pick up, but in the end, he followed after seeing that no one protested, leaving the buckets behind. Why did you let him go like that? He was our easy way to fill the hot water pot. Now we'll have to go to the river. One of the ninjas complained. We'll have to do it ourselves, the one who stopped his companion said, watching Minato walk away. That was Minato Namikaze, if you didn't notice. It's not wise to go against someone who can infiltrate a village and come out alive, he said in conclusion. Meanwhile, Minato moved away from the camp with his 3 companions and began to explain the situation to Dewey. What? I'm going to join your team? Dewey exclaimed, stunned by the news, as he wasn't used to doing field missions. Yes, we'll be doing missions here on the northern border. I hope we can work together. And, in the meantime, I'm going to help you develop the power of the 8 gates, Minato said. Not that Dewey wouldn't be able to master all the gates in the future, but Minato wanted to help him naturally master the 6th gate by the end of this war, making him, in everyone's eyes, the ninja he was meant to be, with the recognition he deserved. But more than that, he also needed to start learning hockey, which he had never trained before. I'm so happy! Dewey exclaimed excitedly. Yes, I'll do my best, Minato. I'll show the power of youth on every occasion. Dewey started to cry, while the girls looked at him, not quite understanding his behavior. Minato just smiled, he knew that this would be a unique partnership from that day forward. As they made history together, Guy would develop the 8 gates, and Minato would begin with armament hockey. Chapter 173, Plans for Armament Hockey. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. Team 7 had been at the northern border for a week since Mike Dewey joined their team, settling into the camp's routine. However, Minato and his team hadn't been assigned any missions, as they were officially exempt from camp duties carried out by other ninjas. They spent this time training in one of the fields near the camp. Having a letter from the Hokage was an advantage, as it allowed them the exclusive use of this training ground where no other ninjas could approach or interrupt them. The privacy was indeed welcome. The name Minato Namikaze quickly became recognized throughout the camp, and Minato earned a certain level of respect locally, though many people seemed too intimidated to talk to him. He was grateful for that. After all, he had other priorities now. He was never particularly interested in the idea of being known as a hero or being showered with admiration. His intense training with Might Do Wei had begun. It was mid-afternoon, and his friend in the green jumpsuit was sprawled on the ground, hands pressing against the earth as he tried to move, his entire body sore from the intense training that Minato had put him through that day. They hadn't even stopped for lunch, spending the whole day training. "Already tired, Do Wei?" Minato asked with an amused tone, watching his friend struggle but with a feeling of respect. Minato was a bit dirty himself. He couldn't say he was unaffected after training intensely alongside Do Wei, but he was in better shape than his friend. "No. I can keep going," Do Wei murmured, starting to push himself up with effort, as the weighted seals, something Minato had previously given him, now felt even heavier. Minato had upgraded the weights to over 10,000 kilograms, aiming to increase them to 15,000 or even 20,000 by the end of the year. It shouldn't be too difficult for Do Wei. After all, Minato himself was carrying 15,000 kilograms on his own body. "Alright, let's keep going," Minato said, satisfied, seeing Do Wei pushing himself to the limit. Knowing his partner was tireless and a prodigy in physical prowess, Minato understood that Dewey's body was already extremely powerful, stronger than most jounins, though he had never had the chance to prove it. Quickly, they resumed training while, nearby, Hanabi was also practicing. She focused on wind element jutsus, working on the technique she was learning. But it wasn't just that. She was also studying scrolls on the human body and chakra control to enhance her effectiveness with medical jutsus. Tsunade didn't take long to send a report to all battle camps about her major project of assigning a medical ninja to each team. An initiative started at the western border. Although it was initially implemented in that region, she sent the report to all other battle camps as well, aiming to encourage the command in each area to follow her lead, as she believed this was the right path. Hanabi, learning medical ninjutsu, also received a letter that included the code of conduct for medical ninjas that Tsunade had created. Minato recalled a particular rule not being mentioned there, the one Tsunade herself had broken in her battle against Madara. But only she and, perhaps, her daughter could do this, creating a crystal on their foreheads from years of accumulated chakra. Makoto, on the other hand, was in a corner of the field, sparks of electricity in her hand, striking a stone as she attempted to develop her skills with the Chidori, as Minato had suggested. She seemed to struggle with maintaining her jutsu, mainly because her mind was elsewhere, thinking about her father. She hadn't been in contact with him, despite knowing he was nearby. In recent months, Makoto had received several letters from him, letters that she frowned upon reading, feeling a bit nervous about meeting him. The training continued as Do Wei and Minato kept up with their physical training, and the girls worked on their current skills until the end of the day when the sunset began to color the sky. Finally, Hanabi approached Minato after putting everything away. "Let's head back to camp." Minato, standing beside an exhausted Do Wei, nodded to her, while Makoto also passed by, greeting and saying her goodbyes. This routine repeated itself daily, with Makoto and Hanabi organizing things for the night back at camp, while Minato and Do Wei trained from dawn to dusk every day. Minato possessed a powerful physique, and Do Wei held an uncommon willpower, a determination rarely found in people of this world. After the girls left, Minato saw Do Wei fall to the ground once more, exhausted, as he approached with a smile. "Well, it looks like that's your limit for now. Let's rest a bit, I want to talk to you," Minato said. Do Wei nodded, breathing heavily while lying on his back, still keeping a cheerful smile on his face. Despite the challenges, he was happy to be able to train all the time, something he could hardly do before due to all the tasks assigned to him. Even when receiving orders from higher-ranking ninjas, Do Wei always performed his duties with a smile and the energy of youth, trying to make the best of every situation. Minato truly admired this determination, but he knew that now was the time to set Do Wei on the right path to developing the 8 gates. It's time to bring out the things from the scroll, Minato said as Due sat in front of him, looking curious. Minato quickly began pulling out various items, including a scroll he unrolled in front of Due, showing the human body with the points of the 8 gates marked, along with additional drawings that Minato had made himself. "It's so similar to mine," Due exclaimed, as he searched his pocket for a small piece of paper, which he placed beside Minato's. It was a much more scribbled drawing, with a few points marked, but not as complete as Minato's, which had been created with all the knowledge he possessed from the future. "Well, Due," Minato murmured, a bit lost upon seeing Due's drawing, but continued, "I want you to take this scroll and try to develop it from now on. I know it's incomplete, but only you can finish it. Also, here are all these books I managed to buy in the village." He pointed to the stack of books beside him. They were all books about the human body and chakra control, including information on chakra flow. If he had access to the Hyuga clan's books, it would help even more with Due's technique, as they studied chakra flow within the human body with precision. However, even being close to Hanabi, there was no way to obtain these confidential materials from the clan's main family. Due was stunned by the number of books in front of him. There were at least 20 of them. "They're all for you to study, Due. I want you to spend every night studying and developing this technique on your own. I'm not as talented as you in this area, so only you can do this," Minato said. Deep down, he knew the technique was meant for Due. He was there only to guide his friend and let him take it all on himself. "Minato, these books are so expensive. I could never afford them," Due said, looking amazed. He noticed that some of the books were rare ones he'd always wished to have, but they were far too costly for him, given his genin status. "Don't worry about that, Due. They're all yours, it's my gift to you. Study as much as you want, and if you need help, I'll be here." "But I believe you can manage this on your own," Minato said, giving him an encouraging smile. Hearing this, Due couldn't resist and, overwhelmed with emotion, lunged forward to hug him while crying gratefully. Minato saw this and quickly vanished in an instant, avoiding the sticky embrace, leaving Due grasping at thin air. He reappeared on the other side of the training field, where a kunai lay on the ground, and saw Due falling to the ground, with no one to grab onto. "Study the books, Due. I'll stay a bit longer," Minato said, ending the training for the day. Due nodded, standing up awkwardly, grabbing Minato's books and scroll as he left the training field, smiling and exclaiming his usual words of enthusiasm. Now, Minato was alone in that place, able to begin his personal training. He walked to the center of the field, raised his fist, and stretched. Seeing that no one was around, he closed his eyes and tried to focus on haki, something he hadn't even begun to learn yet, attempting to draw the energy of armament from within himself. Haki came from the spirit of a person, whether it was armament haki, observation haki, or, most importantly, conqueror's haki. Although he had no real understanding of the latter, he had already released it twice in moments of rage. He then focused on armament, trying to channel his energy into his fist. He felt his whole body warm up as he attempted, somehow, to move this energy directly into his arm. And, in fact, it worked. He began to concentrate all the heat from his body into his shoulder, directing it specifically to that spot. "So, this is armament haki?" Minato thought as he kept all that heat concentrated. Then he began to channel it, commanding the energy through his arm, circulating it down to his forearm and moving it forward to his hand, where his fist was clenched. Tiny sparks began to appear faintly as he tried to keep his fist as the hottest part of his body, feeling as if it were in a furnace, but without causing pain or discomfort. He only felt the heat and even a slight tingling. His eyes opened as he saw small black marks appearing on his fist, with tiny red and black sparks around it. However, he managed to see this for only a second before the technique simply failed, returning everything to normal. "Well, looks like I need to train even more," Minato murmured, accepting his first attempt and realizing he was still miles away from truly mastering that technique. But he wasn't discouraged at all. He needed someone to help him harden his body, and there weren't many fighters on the battlefield who could do that. He couldn't simply fight tailed beasts due to their size or summon his giant toad as a training partner. But there was Due, a powerful taijutsu user. If Dewey opened up to the sixth gate, he could provide Minato with beneficial fights, helping him quickly develop his skills. In the end, Minato stayed there a while longer, training and occasionally failing with the technique, until he began to harden his body, striking a few things to test his resilience, though still only scratching the surface of the potential he could achieve. When he finished, he returned to the camp and dined with the girls, while Dewey appeared, studying and reading all those books with the determination of someone lost in the desert, seeking water. Eventually, they went to sleep. The next day, Minato was awakened by a Chunin approaching his tent. "Minato Namikaze, I've come to inform you that Commander Aburame is requesting your presence in his tent. It seems there's a mission for you," he reported. Minato nodded, realizing that he would finally begin working at the camp as a shinobi at last. Chapter 174 Mission in Odo 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. Minato was then summoned for an A-rank mission that morning, surprised as he arrived at Commander Aburame's tent, where he immediately began receiving details about the mission. The ninjas from Kumo have invaded the Land of Sound. The Sound Village took a neutral stance in this war, so they didn't support any side, but Kumo doesn't seem satisfied with that, and the Third Reikage, along with his advisors, decided to invade the Land of Sound to gain a larger area from which to attack Konoha. He said. So they plan to do the same as they did with the Land of Hot Springs and the Land of Swamps. Minato murmured as the captain nodded. After all, Kumo didn't have a direct border with Konoha. There were two countries in between, and they had started the war by invading them. However, the Land of Sound was not a territory they had previously invaded. What did they do in the country? Minato asked as the man pulled out a scroll for Minato to see. So they took over a city. Minato murmured, seeing that this had happened just a few days ago in the area of Camp 3. He hadn't known about the incident since command hadn't passed on any information to him, and he had been focused on training with his team. The mission was essentially to deploy forces from various camps to unite in an attempt to retake the city for the Sound Village. After all, Konoha preferred to allow Odo its neutrality, as it covered most of the land between the Land of Fire and other countries to the north. I need you to go with your team along with some selected units. Although there are no Chunin or Genin in the others, I still wonder if you can compensate for Team 7's lack of power on an A-rank mission, the commander asked. I can take care of them as well, Minato replied, and the man nodded at this. All right, then. I'll authorize your team for the mission, he said, and Minato nodded, noting the instructions on the scroll. This mission is crucial, and we can't allow Kumo to continue its invasion of Odo, as it would put Konoha at a disadvantage along the northern border, he added seriously, and Minato nodded. Don't worry, we'll succeed in this, Minato assured him. I'm sure you will. Good luck, the commander said as Minato left the command tent. Minato waited for everyone to wake up, as it was still early morning, while Dewey seemed the most tired from having not slept much after studying hard. So we finally have a mission, Makoto commented. Minato made coffee as he shared the initial details with everyone gathered there. This is a very challenging mission. I've never been part of anything like this. Confessed Dewey, expressing concern about something he had never done before. This mission might be a bit much for you. I'd like to let you sit it out this time so you can study. Minato responded, preferring for Dewey to stay behind and take time to prepare better. No, Minato, I want to participate too. I promise I won't be a burden. Dewey insisted quickly. Despite his nervousness, he still wanted to contribute. Minato sighed, contemplating what he should do. After all, he knew Dewey wasn't very useful in missions of this type yet. However, he didn't want to exclude him, as this type of mission was also important for his growth. Finally, he decided to take responsibility for him on the mission. All right, Dewey. I'll allow your participation this time. Just promise to follow everything I and the team leader instruct, Minato said. Dewey nodded, excited. Thank you, Minato, he replied gratefully. Great, let's get ready. We'll depart in the middle of the afternoon when all teams are prepared to leave camp, Minato concluded, and everyone agreed, beginning to pack up their tents and continue the day as usual. At the designated time, the team gathered, fully prepared, along with 4 additional teams of Jounin who assembled in the middle of the camp as Team 7 approached. "So, you're Team 7, one of the Jounin asked, approaching them. Minato recognized the man for being quite active in recent weeks, carrying out numerous missions and staying close to the commander. "Yes, we are," Minato nodded as he replied. "Great, I'll be the squad leader. I believe you've read the reports. One of the camps needs reinforcements to reclaim an area in the Land of Sound, and even Oto Village is requesting help. Various camps are sending reinforcements, and we're one of them," he instructed before returning to a key point about Minato's team. "You're Team 7, the only one with a Jounin and a Genin. But the commander assured me you can balance everything out, so I'm putting my trust in you, Minato Namikaze," he said, then turned back to the rest of the Jounins, a team of 20 people. "Let's go," the leader ordered, and all the teams began advancing out of the camp, with Team 7 aligned in the middle of them. "I hate being underestimated like that," Makoto murmured, still remembering the words about how Minato would need to balance the team with his strength. "Relax, you're already almost at the level of a Jounin, you'll be even more powerful soon," Minato tried to reassure her, and she nodded, her face still serious, though she appreciated his words. And so, they headed north. After a few hours, they entered the area near Camp 3 and eventually reached the camp, where several groups were gathering from all directions as they passed the sentries. Once they arrived, they settled in a corner amidst the crowd, and the leader returned to everyone in the Camp 6 squadron. "I'll make sure to coordinate our position with the other leaders, there's likely a meeting happening right now." "You all can wait here," the man said, and everyone nodded. Minato remained silent, letting him take charge, as they were newcomers to this front and didn't hold as much influence as on the Western Front. They waited for some time, while the ninjas around focused on their respective groups. Some glanced curiously at Minato, noting his presence, but no one approached him. His teammates stayed close by, especially Due, who seemed both excited and nervous. Due had donned his scarf and wore a green cloak, making him stand out among the others and drawing a few chuckles from some groups. Minato couldn't deny that his look was a bit over the top, but he let Due do as he pleased. "There are people from your clan here," Hanabi remarked, noticing several men with the Uchiha symbols on their backs, casting arrogant glances their way. "Yes," Makoto replied, observing the variety of ninjas present, even spotting a few squads with Hyuga members among them. It didn't take long for the squad leader to return. "All right, let's gather in a circle. I need to share the information we and the others have gathered, along with our course of action for this mission in the land of Oto," he began, as everyone followed his instructions, forming a circle as he started to explain the mission strategy. In the end, the mission consisted of a direct attack on Oto, targeting the city. They didn't anticipate any significant enemy force and expected to expel the Kumo soldiers fairly easily. As he finished explaining, Minato raised his hand, drawing the group's attention. "Do you have a suggestion, Minato Namikaze?" the leader asked, intrigued. "With all due respect, don't you think it's a bit risky to invade the country like this without precise information?" Minato commented. "We're fully aware of that, but none of the teams we sent to scout returned. We have to send a stronger force to see what's going on and hopefully drive them out," the man replied, his tone serious. "May I suggest something, then?" Minato asked, and the man nodded, allowing him to continue. "I could enter Oto alone. That way, we can adapt the strategy based on the detailed information I can gather. I can do it easily, and once I bring back more accurate intel on the location, we can refine the plan with more precision," Minato suggested. He wasn't entirely comfortable with the mission, feeling that it could put his companions at unnecessary risk. The man considered the proposal, looking thoughtful before nodding. "This could work, kid. It's not a bad idea." He seemed convinced, rolling up the scroll again and ending the meeting. "I'll inform command. They'll appreciate the idea, especially knowing we have someone trained in infiltration and with experience on the Western Front under Jiraiya's tutelage," he said as he left. Everyone seemed to agree. After all, information was vital for a ninja, and Minato could easily gather it, allowing them not to attack blindly. Soon after, the man departed, setting up a new meeting with the rest of command. Minato was summoned a while later, with several ninjas approaching the group, and he made his way to the meeting location. Upon entering the tent, he found several Jounin, leaders of other squads, along with the camp's commander, all studying him closely. "So, you're Minato Namikaze," said one of the men beside the commander, observing him intently. Minato nodded. The leader of Squad 3 then presented Minato's proposal to infiltrate the Land of Sound and gather the necessary intelligence. "Can you handle this?" someone asked. "I can do it," Minato replied confidently. The Jounin exchanged glances, assessing the situation. Minato appeared sure of himself, and his reputation for exceptional skills, along with his mission record, weighed heavily in their decision. "All right, I'll trust in your experience. After all, you managed to infiltrate Suna. We'll let you take the lead," the commander declared, looking at everyone there. "If you're in favor, raise your hand," he requested, and everyone promptly did so, making the decision unanimous. Minato nodded, resolute. "All right. Just give me a few days, and I'll head out alone now, taking advantage of the dark sky," he said, as the sun was beginning to set. The group of Jounin agreed, understanding they would need to wait for this new strategy. They'd have to hold off on the main plan until Minato completed his part, but precise intelligence was extremely valuable for this mission and could save lives. Minato left the tent and rejoined his team, who waited alongside the others in the camp. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Hanabi asked, watching him with concern. Minato nodded. "Yes, I'll be leaving right now. You'll stay here for a few days. When I return, we'll carry out the mission together." He wanted them all to fulfill this journey as a team, even though he knew he likely had the capability to complete it alone. Everyone nodded, while Dewey expressed his enthusiasm, encouraging Minato to unleash the power of youth. Makoto remained silent, showing her support and confidence through her steady gaze. Then, Minato vanished swiftly before them, moving toward the forest. He leaped from tree to tree until he began to move through the air, using Jeppo. He floated above the treetops, disappearing quickly northward as the sky darkened, slipping into the Land of Sound undetected. Chapter 175 Mission in Oto 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. Minato didn't take long to reach Oto, easily crossing the entire border. He went to the city located in the eastern part of the Land of Sound, near the border with the Land of Mist. The city was closed, with a dark atmosphere hanging over it. There was clearly no movement in the streets, as the city had been overtaken, and even from 1,000 meters in the air, he could see the heavy movement of soldiers on the rooftops, all of them Kumo ninjas. There were also ninja movements outside the city, among the forests surrounding the walls to the west. There was a lot of movement in the trees, and Minato deduced they were Oto ninjas, either trying to monitor the occupied city or negotiating with Kumo. "Well, let's get started," Minato murmured while still in the sky. He grabbed a kunai and threw it down from above, making sure it fell unnoticed. As soon as the kunai passed through undetected, a small object difficult to spot, Minato appeared in an empty lot, wearing discreet clothes. He didn't even wear Konoha attire, as it was safer to appear as an unknown ninja rather than as one from Konoha right away. He quickly assessed the situation now that he was within enemy territory, stowing away his kunai. He could sense the entire city, which wasn't very large. There are around 120 Kumo Jonin-level ninjas. Minato estimated the levels of the ninjas in the city. Besides them, there were about 40 ninjas stationed on the border, ambushing all the teams that approached. Minato decided to take a look around the city, moving forward while avoiding any patrols. The city was completely dark, and he could sense the civilians inside their homes, surrounded by the shinobi who had taken over. "This is common, unfortunately, given that we're at war," Minato commented, knowing the cruelty that had spread through all the nations affected by the conflict. He himself had lost many people he knew and might even have lost Kushina and Suna. He shook his head for a moment, trying to dispel these thoughts while focusing on his mission, to scout the city and start placing Raijin seals in as many places as possible. "Mama, aren't the bad ninjas going to leave?" A young boy opened the window, looking out at the dark city and wondering when they would get their lives back. Heavy footsteps sounded from within the house, quickly approaching the boy. "What are you doing? We need to stay inside." The woman quickly pulled the boy back, and he could do nothing. But suddenly, he caught sight of someone on one of the rooftops, watching him. The hooded figure seemed to be looking right at him, part of his face exposed, as he put his finger to his lips to signal the boy not to speak, mouthing something along the lines of, "Soon, everything will be okay, kid." After that, Minato continued moving around the city, hiding from the patrols, but he didn't go too close to the city center due to sensing a sensory ninja, so he kept his distance from their range. "I think that's good enough. But I should check the border of the Land of Clouds before heading back to Konoha," Minato decided, retrieving his kunai again and preparing to throw it with force. The object shot into the sky, and he reappeared next to it, catching it quickly and beginning to step through the air. He spent the rest of the night assessing the situation in the Land of Sound, memorizing all enemy data without being seen. He had to keep a great distance because of the large number of sensors in Kumo's army, but he still managed to gather everything he wanted. After all, his hockey range was greater than the enemy's sensing abilities, allowing him to even go north and find other enemy camps. In the end, Kumo was determined to take over Oto, which was supposed to remain neutral in this war, so the third Hokage isn't very pleased with how the war between Konoha and his village is going. Minato couldn't blame him. His pride must have taken a significant hit after failing to defeat Konoha despite years of trying to breach the Land of Fire, while Konoha continued fighting against 4 nations at the same time, a testament to Konoha's dominance over the continent. Minato decided to disappear near dawn, leaving Oto and appearing suddenly, startling Makoto, who was asleep. Makoto quickly sat up, feeling the weight on her bed and seeing her companion, dressed in infiltration attire. "Minato! You're back! But why did you come into my tent?" she exclaimed, as Minato smiled. "Sorry about that, but I thought of using the Raijin seal on you, so, sorry for the intrusion. Can I sleep here for a bit?" Minato didn't need to rush his report to his superiors and decided to rest for at least 2 hours. He didn't have his own tent at this camp, so he would use Makoto's bed. "How can you say something like that so casually after barging into my bed like this?" Makoto completely lost her usual stoic Uchiha composure, looking at Minato with both anger and embarrassment. "Just let me sleep a little." Makoto heard Minato murmuring as he continued lying there. "You?" she murmured, clenching her fists, wanting to hit her companion, but she glanced down and realized she was only in her nightgown. She blushed, realizing she was standing like that in front of Minato, and quickly ran to a corner of the tent to cover herself. Minato wasn't even facing her. He was already on the other side, having fallen into a light sleep. Minato woke up a moment later, with the camp already filled with the sound of ninjas starting their day. As he rose, he found Makoto's bed exceptionally high quality and comfortable, expected from the daughter of the clan leader. He raised his head as he sat up and found her standing, glaring at him with her arms crossed. "Good morning," he asked, raising an eyebrow at her. "Good morning. Is that all you have to say to me after entering my bed in the middle of the night while I wasn't even dressed properly?" Makoto's voice was filled with anger as she looked at him seriously, dressed now in her usual attire but wearing an expression that was a mixture of anger and embarrassment, wondering when Minato had become so bold. "I didn't think of anyone else. I just needed to sleep. Anyway, I should go." Minato spoke, stretching, while Makoto looked at him, wondering how he could be so shameless. "Wait, don't you dare leave through that door like this, use your teleportation. If any ninja sees you leaving here, rumors will start, and there are Uchiha ninjas in this camp. My father is already pressuring me to." Makoto was about to continue, but she felt Minato's hand on her shoulder. "Hey, relax," Minato said, looking her in the eyes. "I'd never dishonor you. You can tell me later what's going on with you, but now I need to report my information to command, so hang tight, alright?" Minato's touch surprised Makoto, and her shoulders relaxed without her realizing it. "Alright, sorry about that," she murmured, her hands almost moving on their own to hug Minato, but she quickly stopped, feeling it would be too strange, and Minato disappeared the next instant. Now alone, Makoto looked at where Minato had been. What am I thinking? She murmured, nearly acting out in such a way. Minato went to the command tent, and as soon as he arrived, all the squad commanders were quickly summoned there. Did you manage to find anything, kid? You look unharmed, so I assume everything went well, one of the ninjas present commented, looking at Minato with interest, noticing how well he seemed after saying he'd infiltrated Oda when no other team had succeeded. You don't seem to know this kid. Given his track record, do you think infiltrating a city with a few ninjas would be difficult? Other ninjas commented to their comrade before turning their attention back to Minato. Still, I'm very curious about how you did it so easily in one night, he added, though Minato didn't respond. He turned back to everyone there, already accustomed to handling a group of adults. I've recorded all the data on this scroll, Minato said, pulling out a scroll with all the enemy intel he had noted down through the night before coming to the camp. Then he continued, but just to get ahead of things, this mission will be a failure. His words left everyone surprised. What do you mean by that? Another Jonin asked, narrowing his eyes. We're bringing almost 100 ninjas, but the enemy has 10 times that spread throughout the region, Minato explained. 1,000 Kumo ninjas? Why so many? Someone asked, stunned. Yes. I'll start sharing all the information I gathered in general terms. Minato didn't let the questions escalate as he began to recount everything he had observed during his infiltration, relaying all the data as the ninjas mentally marked each Kumo force positioned in the village. If this is true, we can't proceed with the mission, one of the leaders said to the camp commander. You're right. This needs to be passed on to the general commander. After all, we're also dealing with the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, as the kid here informed us, he said, and everyone agreed. With the group initially headed to Odo, they seem to have only gotten past the first enemy barrier on the border. I can liberate the city on my own, Minato suddenly spoke up. Seeing that all attention was now on him, he continued, I've marked the city with my seals, and I can come and go. He ended up suggesting this. I think we should discuss this with the commander. In any case, let's inform him right away, with a team, and wait for his response, the camp commander decided, giving his verdict as the mission was postponed with the new intel. A brief debate ensued, but in the end, everyone agreed, and a team was sent to inform Tsukumo. We'll wait a few days, so settle in for now, he informed everyone as they nodded, starting to leave the tent. Minato found his team a moment later as they were having their first meal of the day, with Due as cheerful as ever, making the coffee, Hanabi preparing something to eat, and Makoto looking a bit embarrassed in the corner. Minato! Miss Makoto told us you were back, as quick as ever. Due exclaimed. Hello, Due. Well, anyway, the mission has been postponed, Minato announced, surprising everyone. What are we going to do now? Hanabi asked. We have no choice but to train while we wait. Command still needs to give orders on what to do next, Minato said, and everyone nodded, realizing they'd have to wait a bit longer before carrying out the mission. Chapter 176, Mission in Odo 03. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. Once again, a meeting was called in the command tents, and Minato, once again, was among the other leaders after being personally summoned by his squad leader. So, Commander Tsukumo himself will personally participate in this mission? One of them murmured, surprised and excited at the same time by the command's response. Yes, the commander will come personally. After reading the information in our reports, we'll have to deal with some serious adversaries today, and he'll be there to confront the Jinchuriki. Now we can defeat any village. Another chimed in, morale rising high. In the end, the mission had completely changed, and now an even larger elite force would be gathering at the camp. Minato remained silent throughout the entire meeting. He had already done his part, while the adult men discussed the strategy. But nothing was finalized yet, as he had to wait for the new commander to arrive to make any real decisions. After the meeting, Minato returned to Team 7 in front of their tent, going about his tasks. He informed them of the situation while they nodded at the information, spending a few days training until the mission was set to start. Then the day finally came. Tsukumo arrived, bringing over 100 ninjas behind him, and went to speak with the leader while Minato remained with his team. The place was getting more and more crowded with jonins, as besides the 100 that came with Sakumo, another 200 started gathering from other camps after the command's order to send reinforcements. The camp is so crowded, Hanabi murmured, as Team 7 waited in front of their tents, surrounded by many others, watching the camp become busier and more packed with jonins awaiting the leaders to send them to Oto. Yes, so many ninjas. This mission is really important. Due commented, having never experienced anything like this before. Yes, it seems that way. Makoto responded, her tone weaker than usual, almost imperceptible, as if something was bothering her. No one noticed this, except Minato, who could sense her emotions and noted she seemed off. He left Makoto alone, his gaze falling over the bustling camp. He was surprised to see someone for the first time. It was Fugaku Uchiha, the next leader of the Uchiha clan, standing with a group of other Uchiha bearing the clan symbol, all summoned for the mission. Minato also noticed Fugaku's gaze directed toward them, or perhaps toward Makoto herself, but he said nothing, unsure of what was going on. Another day passed with Sakumo remaining inside the command tent with the camp leader, and the meeting was finally called the next day. All the squad leaders and additional members gathered in an open space, as there were too many people to fit in a tent now. The camp leader was there, along with Sakumo himself, overseeing everything. Summoned, Minato stood in a corner while they discussed, until Sakumo listened to some of his men but then let his gaze fall upon Minato at one point. Minato Namikaze, he called, as everyone turned their gaze toward him. Minato nodded upon being called, letting Sakumo continue. You certainly did an excellent job, more than anyone else, in gathering information no one else had. You played a vital role, but I've only read the reports. I'd like to hear from you directly. You mentioned there's a considerable number of ninjas in the village and at the border between the Land of Sound and the Land of Fire, as well as a few camps to the north and east, correct? He said, and Minato cleared his throat to respond. Exactly as I mentioned. There are about 120 to 150 ninjas holding the city, 50 ninjas at the border of the Land of Fire, and over 200 between the Land of Sound and the Land of Hot Springs, including a Two-Tails Jinchuriki, and to the north still within the Land of Oto, at least 100 ninjas camping. They seem to be campaigning to conquer Oto's territory and force it to ally against us, Minato said, providing his conclusion. Good reasoning, that's probably it, replied Sakumo, as Minato felt a gaze upon him. It was none other than Fugaku himself, also present, watching him with a hostile expression for some reason. However, Minato, not understanding the reason, chose not to be bothered by it. Sakumo continued the meeting, beginning to outline a strategy. It was clear that Kumo hadn't launched a full-scale attack yet, as they seemed to be testing Konoha's stance on Oto. Naturally, Konoha would not allow this to happen, but they needed to stay alert on two fronts now, dealing with Oto as well as the Land of Hot Springs, since an attack there could be part of a trap involving the northern campaign. Everyone there formed a group that would head to the front lines in Oto, while ninjas gathered to reinforce the borders between the Land of Fire and the Land of Hot Springs. The discussion continued, and in time, the plan was finalized. Sakumo gave his decision, and everyone was dismissed. They would have one day to prepare, and soon they would invade the Land of Sound. Minato returned to his team, and by then, night had fallen. He called for a small meeting among the four of them. We'll be going soon, Minato said, as everyone nodded. Hanabi and Due returned to their tents, while Makoto did the same. Makoto, Minato called, and she turned to face him. Do you have a minute? He asked, and she nodded, as the others were already getting ready to sleep. Is something bothering you, Makoto? Minato asked, looking at her seriously. Why do you say that? There's nothing bothering me, she murmured, a hint of caution in her gaze. Even so, I'm a bit concerned. We have an important mission tomorrow, and I want to see my team at their best for it. I don't want anything distracting us, Minato told her. I'm fine, Minato, there's nothing you need to worry about. Makoto returned to her tent after insisting she was fine, preferring to keep a low profile. Minato simply nodded and went to his tent as well. Makoto entered her tent, cautiously scanning the empty space before moving forward and sitting on the ground near her sleeping bag. She took out a letter from within a scroll. It looked as though it had already been opened, she had received it a day ago, sealed with her family's crest. It was a letter from her father, sent through some clan ninjas who were also on this mission. I want you to come speak with me personally as soon as possible. We must now discuss your future. You have done everything you wanted these past years, and although I am proud that you joined the strongest team of your generation, we must still respect the clan's rules. And those rules include forbidding any inappropriate relationship with that boy on your team. People talk, Makoto, and there are disrespectful rumors going around. The clan will not accept a Sharingan born outside it. Therefore, I have arranged a marriage for you, and you will leave your team at the end of this war and conduct yourself as the future wife of the clan leader after me. The words were etched into the letter. As small drops fell onto the paper from above. At that moment, Makoto began to cry. She obviously didn't want to leave the team. She was alongside someone she had grown to love over the years. Even though it was clear that he already had serious relationships with other girls, she kept her feelings secret, unable to control what her heart had chosen. She didn't want this. She didn't want to leave the team, she didn't want to be away from Minato. But what could she do? Her father demanded it, and Minato was already a man committed to 2 women, from the Senju and Uzumaki clans. What could she do? Things have to be this way, she murmured, trying to wipe away the tears streaming down her face, letting the pain build up more and more in her heart, suffering in silence throughout that night. He was struggling with his haki, his own thoughts locked in conflict throughout the night. He tried to sleep but waited until his companion finally started to rest, though thoughts clouded his mind. He simply sighed, and by the next morning, the scene had changed. Explosions and men's screams echoed through the forest as Konoha began its invasion of Oto. At that moment, everyone was in motion, advancing along the border as hundreds of Konoha ninjas spread out. Minato maintained a serious look as he led Team 7, which was part of the squad from Camp 6, and even Makoto had set aside any weakness she'd felt from those tears. Her 3-tomo Sharingan shone intensely, focused on defeating any enemy. Can you cover the left flank while the others head to the right? The squad leader asked Minato. Leave it to me, he replied, moving to the designated side, leading Team 7 as some groups of Kumo ninjas appeared ahead. Minato quickly noticed this, stomping firmly on a branch, which cracked beneath him with the force, and sped forward, surprising one of the ninjas with a powerful kick as he passed, moving swiftly to engage the others afterward. Makoto and Hanabi joined the fray, with Hanabi attacking with her Bao, catching some enemies by surprise. Makoto activated her Sharingan, placing several ninjas under a genjutsu before defeating them, even if they were jounins. Due, on the other hand, was having some difficulty, facing 3 adult ninjas who tried to strike him as he awkwardly dodged their attacks. When one of them was about to hit him from behind, Minato reappeared, kicking the ninja thanks to the seal he had placed on Due the entire time, sensing the danger on him through his haki. After defeating those ninjas, the other 2 pulled back, but Minato still held Due by his green jumpsuit and suddenly pulled him forward, launching him toward one of the ninjas. Due shouted in surprise as he was thrown, inadvertently landing a desperate kick on his opponent, who barely had time to react to the speed at which Due was flung at him. As for the second ninja, he didn't have time to respond either. A kunai appeared in the air, flying toward him, and Minato reappeared just before he could dodge, striking him and finally defeating the small enemy squad. All fell to the ground, defeated, and Hanabi, with her Byakugan activated, approached and looked around. There's no one else here, Minato, Hanabi said. Very well. Let's join the main group after we tie up these ninjas, Minato ordered. Everyone nodded as he helped Due, who had fallen and was trying to get up, covered in dirt. Congratulations, Due. You defeated a jounin, he said, and Due looked at him, confused, wondering if Minato was teasing him. After a moment, the team gathered their prisoners and advanced to the next battlefield. Thus, they continued the group's advance into Oto. Chapter 177 Mission in Oto 04. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. The battle at the border quickly tilted in Konoha's favor due to the unexpected attack by the Land of Fire as they advanced directly toward the Land of Sound. Tsukumo was leading the main group advancing toward the city, while hundreds of ninjas followed him, and teams took care of the other enemies on the flanks as they moved forward. How are the teams? Tsukumo asked as an assistant, a Hyuga approached him from the side to give the report. All the Kumo ninjas on the border are being pressured, but none have managed to pass through to inform the enemy, so we're free for a surprise attack, the Hyuga reported. I see. Let's position some ninjas around the city so we can catch anyone trying to alert other camps. We should aim to catch them while we still have the element of surprise. Tsukumo ordered as the ninjas began to move, already inside the land of sound, with the darkened city appearing on the horizon. The ninjas moved quickly, now within the land of sound, as the shadowed city loomed ahead in the distance. To the south, Minato was part of one of the squads responsible for securing the border and preventing enemies from relaying information about the surprise attack to other strategic areas. They had just finished dealing with a few more enemy teams and were tracking another group when Minato continued defeating ninjas with his team and helping Due face high-level opponents. However, the genin felt somewhat lost, as Minato often had to step in to save Due, using him in some way to handle the situation. They soon regrouped with the team a moment later, bringing Due over to Hanabi and Mikoto. You can guard the bodies like the others, Minato ordered as a toad emerged from his shoulder, landing beside the bodies and opening its mouth to collect them. They moved forward, bringing the captives inside the toad that Minato had summoned from Mount _______, which he always kept on his shoulder. The summoning facilitated the transport of the bodies. Before long, they reached the area where the commander of their squad was waiting, planning the next steps along with the other teams at Camp 6. Well, you're the last ones. I believe we're done here, the commander said, gesturing towards several Kumo ninjas bound on the ground. Leader, should we leave them alive? They've killed many of our soldiers over the years. This is our chance for revenge, murmured one of the ninjas as he approached, hatred evident in his gaze as he stared at the prisoners. No, we shouldn't do that, the commander replied. Although he understood the ninjas' anger and resentment, they couldn't act like this. Minato watched everything from a distance, recalling how he had felt in past situations, when anger overtook him at the sight of fallen comrades, fueling him to fight with fury, killing ninjas on the battlefield. We'll use them to negotiate. I'm sure this will be useful for Konoha in negotiations with Kumo, he concluded, signaling for everyone to follow him. They advanced toward the land of sound, crossing the border along with other squads approaching from various sides of the border. In the distance, they could see an intense battle unfolding on the horizon. It looks like it's already begun, murmured one of the ninjas as they moved toward the city. Minato sensed the presence of sound ninjas who, unaware of Konoha's real position, were just watching. Flames and intense lights appeared far away, accompanied by echoes of explosions, but what drew everyone's attention was a lightning bolt that shot up from the city a moment later, lighting up the distant sky. That, the commander muttered, surprised. This is bad. It looks like they've found a way to alert the other camps, Minato commented, watching the lightning that illuminated the sky, visible for miles. It was clear that the message would reach the other camps, and soon the area would be swarming with Kumo ninjas. They pushed forward, finally reaching the city, where the battle had already concluded, with all the Kumo ninjas defeated. Some houses were destroyed, and fear spread even more among the city's inhabitants. Hundreds of Konoha ninjas gathered, while the Camp 6 squad halted at a strategic point. I'll check the situation and be back shortly, the commander said as everyone nodded, waiting there. Minato, do you think we're going to have a fight here? Due asked, a bit nervous. It was understandable, as brave as he was with his philosophies, he still hadn't dealt with anything like this before. Now, he was truly on a real mission, seeing firsthand how they worked. I believe so. There will be many ninjas, but the worst part is the Jinchuriki. I don't know him, Minato murmured, trying to understand more about the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, as he couldn't remember mentions of this figure in the original work, only about Yujido Ni, who hadn't even been born yet and was captured by the Akatsuki in that future. Everyone remained silent, watching the city completely darkened, except for Due, who showed a certain restlessness. All the places are filled with people. Hanabi murmured as she observed through her Byakugan. Yes. More than knowing of their presence, he could feel their fears there, which was somewhat uncomfortable for Minato. At that moment, the squad leader returned. The commander wants us to set up a security line inside the city, as the enemies are coming here. Even if we try to fight outside, we can use the walls to our advantage, he said. It seemed cruel to use the city as a battlefield, but they were in a war. Everyone nodded as Minato quickly gathered his team for a briefing and prepared to head to the post designated by the supervisor. Minato also sensed Oto ninjas finally approaching the city as Tsukumo spoke with them, explaining the situation. It wasn't long before ninjas appeared from both the north and the east, coordinated effectively, in numbers matching Konoha's forces, just as Minato had noted in his report. The Kumo ninjas halted in front of the city, analyzing the place. One of the ninjas began to step forward, looking intently at them as if he were the leader of the Cloud Village ninjas. Who is the leader of the Konoha ninjas? He shouted as he stepped forward, and Minato sensed a powerful presence emanating from him. With an intense chakra, he was the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, a blond man with an arrogant gaze. Tsukumo stepped forward from the city walls. I am, he said calmly. The Kumo man saw him and broke into a broad smile. Ah, today is my lucky day. We're here precisely because of you, Tsukumo Hatake, he said, while Tsukumo narrowed his eyes. The Kumo ninja continued, I'll give you a proposition. We'll leave Oto and all the Konoha ninjas in peace if you surrender yourself, your life in exchange for all your comrades. What do you say? He proposed. The offer sparked indignation among the Konoha ninjas, but Tsukumo raised his hand, signaling for them to remain silent as he addressed the Jinchuriki. You speak as if you've already defeated us, Tsukumo responded calmly. Do not underestimate Konoha. He had never seen this man on the battlefield, but that was no reason for him to falter in front of all his ninjas. The Kumo ninja laughed, derisive. You may have caught the city by surprise, as it seems you've somehow discovered our operation. But the plan remains the same. Not only have you taken the city, but you've also walked right into a trap we originally set just for you, Tsukumo. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tashi, the one who will kill you, he said with a confident smile. It seemed Minato was not the focus of attention here, just another ninja doing his part, which was perfectly fine, while Tsukumo was the main target the enemies wanted to eliminate. Your words are empty. Let's begin the battle, Tsukumo declared, raising his hand to signal his Konoha ninjas to prepare for the attack. Still, the Kumo ninja continued laughing. You know, I never joined this war over the past 3 years, and do you know why? Because they wanted me kept as a secret. But let me tell you something, great Tsukumo, he said, clasping his hands together. Blue flames began to form, emerging from his body. Even Tsukumo was taken aback, watching an explosion of flames ignite. Let me show you how a perfect Jinchuriki fights. What is that? Hanabi asked, watching alongside her team as the immense amount of chakra began to manifest, while Minato's eyes widened in astonishment. He's a perfect Jinchuriki, Minato murmured, incredulous, as the two tails began to emerge. The flames burst forth, taking shape into a massive cat surrounded by blue flames, towering over the city walls. Even Tsukumo observed, shocked, momentarily losing his composure. This is bad. All of you, stay here, Minato ordered urgently, realizing the situation was becoming critical. Matatabi, the two tails, opened its mouth, beginning to form a Bijudama aimed at the city, which would be easily destroyed if the explosion went off, intending to eliminate Tsukumo and the Konoha ninjas, even if it meant obliterating an entire city. Swiftly, Minato reappeared near Tsukumo, where he had placed a seal in that area of the city, as everyone watched him move to the far edge of the city wall, directly facing the growing black ball of pure chakra. Everyone, get behind me! Minato shouted as Tsukumo looked on, surprised. What are you doing? Tsukumo asked, clearly concerned, as the situation was extremely dangerous. He knew Minato could save himself, and even he might survive, but he was uncertain about the other ninjas in the city. I'm going to try to stop it, Minato replied to Tsukumo, beginning to rapidly form hand seals for a more complex jutsu. Tsukumo had no time to respond or react, as suddenly the Bijudama exploded toward the city, speeding forward and tearing into the ground. Minato finished completing the seals and placed his palm forward. In the next instant, the Bijou Dama appeared to collide with an invisible space right in front of Minato, halting, as massive seals emerged in the air, absorbing the energy sphere within. Everyone watched in astonishment, from the Konoha ninjas to the Kumo ninjas behind the two tails. Minato held the seal steady until the ball was completely absorbed, disappearing, and he quickly performed a new seal, launching the Bijou Dama to a distant location using a kunai set far away. All eyes remained fixed in absolute silence, until suddenly, an explosion erupted on the horizon, lighting up the sky and illuminating the entire city. The intensity was so great that even the buildings trembled. Minato, still standing before the Bijou, felt a surge of relief at having managed to teleport such a powerful attack using the right gene seal. Chapter 178 Mission in Odo 05. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. The entire battlefield was silent while, in the distance, the only exception was the explosion lighting up at least half of the land of sound that night. The explosive echo was heard, and a slight tremor shook the ground, rattling the entire nearby city. He made the attack disappear. How did he do that? A ninja murmured, a glint of admiration in his eyes. I heard about the teleportation jutsu used by the second Hokage, but seeing it in action and used in a way I never imagined, it's incredible. The ninja, in his mid-50s, murmured, recalling how he joined Konoha when it was founded by the great clans as a teenager and became a village ninja as soon as he was of age. He knew well the jutsu used by the second Hokage, after all, he had witnessed it on the battlefield during the First World War. But seeing a young man doing things he had never seen even Tobirama do made the man hold deep respect for this young ninja. He threw it there, amazing. Tsukumo murmured too, with surprise and a touch of fascination, looking at the distant explosion before turning his gaze to the boy who had just saved his life, the city, and all the Konoha ninjas. The people of Konoha weren't the only ones stunned, even the ninjas behind the transformed Jinchuriki were shocked. They initially believed that their plan to destroy the Konoha ninjas was foolproof, with a perfect Jinchuriki launching a Bijou Dama at the city. Even Matatabi, the transformed Jinchuriki, looked into the distance, then back at the boy who had diverted an attack of such magnitude elsewhere, wondering how he had done it and what kind of jutsu he had used, knowing of nothing that could achieve such a feat. Tsukumo took only a few seconds admiring Minato's accomplishment before making a decision. After all, they had to act now that Minato had created an opening. We can't let the Bijou launch another attack like that. Let's attack. With me, advance, he exclaimed, passing by Minato along with several other ninjas. Minato needed to catch his breath, but he felt less tired than he'd expected after launching such a massive energy attack to another location where he had a marked kunai, something he always prepared before facing a Bijou, placing his kunai around the area whenever he had the chance. As the ninjas ran toward the battlefield, with the two tails preparing to fight, Hanabi approached Minato. How are you? She asked, with Makoto and Due approaching close behind. I'm fine. Let's help them too. Minato said, and they all nodded, watching the battle begin as Konoha's ninjas launched explosive tags that detonated on Matatabi's blue-flamed skin. The Bijou, however, barely cared, growling and launching attacks at Konoha, knocking down several ninjas. Then Tsukumo appeared, drawing his sword and delivering a powerful blow, forcing Matatabi herself to retreat several meters. Incredible! Minato murmured, surprised by the legendary Tsukumo Hataki's sword technique, witnessing it for the first time, as each strike managed to make the Bijou back off. Then, with a serious look, Minato quickly advanced to the middle of the battlefield. Let's go, Team 7, he commanded, accompanied by his teammates. Konoha was not only facing the Bijou itself but also enemy ninjas who, observing from behind, decided to advance. Hundreds of them charged for an extended battle. Let's attack the Konoha ninjas. Let's defeat them and avenge our comrades they killed, shouted the Cloud ninjas as they advanced swiftly. The two sides clashed in the next moment, and multi-elemental jutsus began to explode across the battlefield. Kuma, with his natural element of lightning, created lightning strikes across the field with his jutsus, while Konoha was somewhat more versatile with earth and water elements but predominantly fire, with Uchiha on the battlefield, setting the dark sky ablaze with large-scale fire jutsus. Konoha also held an advantage due to the element of surprise and the number of ninjas present, overwhelming the enemy forces after Minato provided detailed information on the enemies without them realizing they had already been investigated. Minato continued fighting with his team in one part of the field while observing the entire scenario. He saw Tsukumo himself facing the Bijou head-on, preventing it from forming another Bijou Dama, which visibly frustrated Matatabi. At the same time, he looked after his team, fighting against the enemy ninjas, mostly Chunin and a few Jonin from Kyumo. Minato would save them occasionally whenever they were in danger or under heavy pressure. Makoto was a frontline fighter, unleashing her powerful fire jutsus, quickly destroying the forest ahead and delaying the enemy, while using her ninja tools as a specialist in kunai and shuriken. Hanabi attacked from a distance, using her Ba to her advantage with its long range, adding wind element and firing her arrows at high speed to strike the ninjas, most of whom were hit. Guy was also a close combat fighter, facing some disadvantages but managing well when Minato helped him, trying to get him accustomed to this type of mission. As for Minato, he moved across the entire battlefield, assisting his teammates and even other nearby Konoha ninjas. He could control the whole battlefield with his Hiraishin, even shifting strategically marked allies' positions. Combined with his observation haki perception, which allowed him to sense everything happening in his area at that moment, he became a force capable of even dictating the rules of the battle. This skill essentially allowed him to control an entire battlefield. In the future, this move would become unstoppable as Minato grew stronger, moving pieces from one side to the other, constantly putting the enemy at a disadvantage. Even now, he could do this with his team, but he would save the full potential of this ability for a near future, to command an entire army with it. The battle continued intensely and seemed like it wouldn't last much longer, just through the night. Tsukumo kept repelling attacks from the Kyumo ninjas, who were starting to feel the pressure. Even the Bijou seemed frustrated, realizing for the first time why Tsukumo was considered the hero of the northern border and the commander under the Hokage. Some were already seeing him as the next fourth Hokage, hoping he would take Hiruzen's place after this war. In a moment of frustration, Matatabi suddenly leapt back several times, trying to move away from Tsukumo and the others, distancing herself from the battlefield. The Bijou then began gathering chakra in her mouth again, aiming it at both Tsukumo and several Kyumo ninjas. "This is bad," Minato murmured, as he, Hanabi, Makoto, and Due watched the scene from a distance. Immediately, Minato vanished and reappeared near the targets of the Bijou Dama, advancing toward where Tsukumo stood with other Jonin. "I can send it somewhere else." Minato raised his voice, preparing to act. Tsukumo narrowed his eyes before responding, "No, you've done enough for now. Let me handle this." He spoke, gripping his sword and stepping forward, while everyone watched alongside Minato. The entire battlefield went into a frenzy at that moment, as the Kyumo ninjas tried to flee as quickly as possible to avoid getting caught in the explosion from their own Jinchuriki. Even the Konoha ninjas grew apprehensive, fearing that the explosive power might be unleashed among them once more. However, Tsukumo kept his breathing controlled and led from the front of the army, with Minato watching, seeing him as if he were entirely in command of the situation. Tsukumo positioned his sword to his side, and it began to glow white. "Commander Tsukumo is going to use his special technique," a Jonin murmured with admiration. "Hey, kid, you may have saved us before, but you're about to see the true reputation of Tsukumo Hataki," one of the ninjas said, turning to Minato, who kept his gaze fixed on Tsukumo in the distance, watching him prepare his sword technique. Matatabi finally reached her limit and aimed directly at Tsukumo before launching her Bijou Dama. The attack destroyed all the trees in the surrounding area, as the enormous chakra sphere shot through the forest in a straight line, devastating everything in its path just with its presence. Tsukumo remained calm, watching the Bijou Dama approach ever closer to where he stood. All the noise and distractions around him seemed to vanish as he focused solely on the glow of his sword, turning it to the side and preparing to unleash his strike. As the Bijou Dama approached, time seemed to slow down. Then, calmly, he began his movement, as if everything was in slow motion. Even from 200 meters away, he swung his sword, slicing the space in front of the attack. The next moment, Minato opened his eyes, surprised. He saw the Bijou Dama start to split in half. The sphere began to divide, with one half rising upward and the other descending. He was in awe, witnessing Tsukumo Hataki's skill, beginning to understand why he was known as one of the greatest ninjas of his era. The halves of the Bijou Dama continued to separate, moving to both sides now, each going in the opposite direction without hitting the city. One side struck part of the city walls, destroying them, while the explosions spread through the forest in the western part of the country, one further north and the other south. Fortunately, the blasts didn't harm the Konoha ninjas or the city, affecting only the surrounding forest. Meanwhile, Tsukumo's slash moves beyond the Bijou Dama, continuing forward, creating a line through the forest and the area devastated by the energy sphere. It was like a shooting slash, and Matatabi could do nothing but receive the attack. Everyone witnessed these two effects simultaneously. On one side, the explosion of the Bijou Dama missing everyone, and on the other, Matatabi roaring in pain. He injured the Bijou. Minato murmured as he saw a slash across one of Matatabi's eyes and an entire tail severed, causing her to scream and begin losing control of her transformation. He's falling. We must rescue him. The Kumo ninjas shouted, quickly entering a panic as they rushed to reach their Jinchuriki, who was losing the transformation until his blue flames left him, returning to human form with a wounded eye. They were closer to him than the Konoha ninjas and quickly reached their Jinchuriki. Hurry, we must retreat, one of the Kumo ninjas ordered, lifting the man's body, his eyes blank with blood and foam coming from his mouth, as they began a hasty withdrawal. Minato remained silent, unconcerned with the retreating Kumo ninjas, continuing to watch Tsukumo's back with a certain admiration. He could comprehend such power coming from a Susanu's sword, but seeing someone wield a sword in human form and achieve something like this was truly incredible, comparable even to the most devastating powers from the world of One Piece. It was a level Minato hadn't thought possible in this world, but here was Tsukumo Hataki. Commander, should we pursue them? A Konoha ninja asked, approaching Tsukumo at that moment as he looked satisfied with the outcome of his attack, which had cut the entire forest in a straight line and forced the Kumo ninjas to retreat. Tsukumo shook his head before answering. No. It's not worth the risk of losing more Konoha ninjas in pursuit. He replied, knowing their goal was to drive the Kumo ninjas out of Oto, ensuring Kumo wouldn't trouble them anytime soon. He then resumed giving orders. Now, tend to all the wounded and give me a report on our losses. Let's return to the city and try to organize things until more Oto ninjas arrive. He commanded, and everyone nodded, relieved that the battle with Kumo had come to an end. As Minato got lost in his thoughts, Tsukumo approached him. You seem impressed, Tsukumo said, smiling. I heard you train kenjutsu with some members of my clan on the western border. Did you think a human sword could reach this level? He asked, curious for the opinion of the young and talented hero of the West and the future powerful ninja Minato was becoming. No. I never imagined someone could reach this level, Minato had to admit, still keeping a tone of admiration in his voice. Chapter 179, Makoto's Future 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. When things began to calm down after no Kumo ninja was seen there anymore, the Konoha ninjas started to organize themselves, helping the wounded while gathering the bodies of their fallen comrades in a corner to place them in bags and send them back to Konoha, to their families. The main leaders returned to the city to try to settle things down, especially with the population, and check if anyone had been hurt as a result of the final conflict. One of the city walls had been destroyed in a corner due to half of the Bijou Dama that Tsukumo had split, and while assessing the damage, they found destroyed houses with families that were far from happy with the situation. However, there was no other choice but to accept help from the Konoha ninjas. Team 7 stayed with Squad 6, assisting here and there in damage management outside the city where the battle had taken place. It wasn't long before a group of Oto ninjas was spotted along with the country's leader himself, coming to speak directly with Tsukumo, and they met in the city. The Kumo ninjas had been expelled from Oto as planned in the mission, but Tsukumo still discussed how they would handle the enemies if they returned. Oto was neutral in this war and didn't want to meddle in the conflict between the great nations, knowing how disastrous it could be for the country. 2 hours had passed since the fight ended, and the entire battlefield was cleaned, with the fallen Konoha ninjas prepared to be taken back to the Land of Fire, while Kumo ninjas were burned to avoid leaving them to rot there. The meeting finally ended as Tsukumo and the leader of Odo agreed to establish a Konoha ninja base as an outpost in the country, so any further Kumo invasions could be reported to the Land of Fire more quickly. Minato and the others were at a corner outside the city with the other teams from Camp 6, waiting for the commander, who had just returned from the meeting. "We're cleared to leave, so let's head back to Camp 6, the leader said. Everyone nodded and prepared to leave. As they began jumping back toward the border, continuing their advance through the trees, Due approached Minato at that moment. "So, the mission is over?" Due asked, curious. "Yes, the mission is over. Now we just need to return and file some reports. Reports that, as the leader, I must write and submit to our superior," Minato replied as Due looked at him with admiration. Minato could understand it. This was the first large-scale mission the genin had participated in, different from the simple tasks they were used to performing. This time, they had faced great ninjas, powerful jutsus, and even explosions involving a bijou, capable of devastating an entire city, power beyond human limits. The return trip was peaceful, with no problems along the way. As soon as they entered the Land of Fire, it didn't take long to finally arrive at Camp 6. "We've arrived. I'll write my report in the main tent. I want all team leaders to submit their reports by the end of the day," the commander requested as they had spent the entire night traveling, the sun now high in the sky. "Let's go," Minato said to his team as they headed to the tent. "What do we do now, Minato?" Hanabi asked. "You can all go to sleep. I'll write the report and rest too," Minato said. "Until we're called again, let's just focus on training, understood?" Minato added, and everyone nodded, as that was the goal of being at the northern border. Everyone went to their tents while Madara created a clone to handle the report, though he looked at it with some disdain but began working on it nonetheless. "Finally, I can read my books," Minato heard Due saying to himself in his tent. In the following days, the same routine of training continued as they used the exclusive training ground for themselves, honing their jutsus. Minato trained his elemental techniques alongside the girls and talked to Due constantly as the latter took the initiative to start developing his own 6 gates. They were just clones, as the original remained focused in a more isolated spot, away from the others, constantly trying to develop his haki. But it was proving incredibly difficult, even making him wonder if he would succeed before Due managed to master the 6 gates. Weeks and weeks of training passed, and everyone was pushing themselves hard, everyone except for one person. Makoto seemed distant and distracted, as if she wasn't fully concentrating anymore. Everyone noticed it. Her rate of progress had slowed considerably compared to the training they had undergone on the western border. "I'm going for a walk." While Minato was preparing a small midday meal, Makoto, who had been deep in thought in a corner, suddenly stood up and announced. Hanabi, who was cutting some vegetables Minato had asked for, looked at Makoto leaving with surprise. "She left during lunch?" She'd never skip Minato's food, she murmured under her breath. Due was sitting in a corner, engrossed in his book while continuing to refine his ideas. Minato, still cooking, watched as the Uchiha girl walked away toward the training grounds. Minato finally finished preparing the meal and began serving it. "I'm stepping out for a bit," he said, picking up 2 trays before disappearing, heading toward the training grounds. Makoto wasn't training. She was sitting by the edge of a river in the forest where they trained, quietly watching the water flow while staring at some stones on the ground. Almost instinctively, she picked one up and raised her hand. She threw it into the water, watching as it skipped across the surface before sinking. She picked up a second, then a third, and a 4th stone, trying to throw them in different ways. Soon, she became so skilled that the stones skipped all the way to the other side of the river at high speed. "What am I doing?" she murmured to herself, seeing the stone land on the other side. Realizing how distracted she had been again, she sighed and finally settled there, hugging her knees and resting her chin on them, heavy thoughts filling her mind. Lately, she had been very pensive. She knew her teammates noticed her change in behavior, but she didn't want to complicate things, so she tried to stay composed. But the thoughts about her father's decisions had left her somewhat depressed. Soon, she would have to leave the team, and that thought filled her with deep sadness. She knew she should try harder or even talk about what was going on, but she also needed to find a way to tell them about her departure, her father's decision, along with the arranged marriage he had planned for her with someone she didn't even know, someone she didn't want to marry. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice another presence until she heard the sound of a stone flying and skipping across the river. The stone bounced on the surface once, twice, 3 times before crossing to the other side, just like hers had. "Who's there?" she asked, turning quickly. That's when she saw Minato approaching, carrying 2 trays of food in one hand. "You were so distracted you didn't even notice I was here," he commented, stopping beside her. "What are you doing here?" she murmured, no longer looking at him. "Can I sit down? I brought food for you and for me." "Maybe we can eat together," Minato suggested. Makoto didn't respond, caught in a vulnerable moment. She didn't even look back at him, keeping her gaze to the side. "I'll take that as a yes," Minato said, watching her. Makoto remained silent. Minato sighed and decided to press on. "You're worrying me, Makoto. I'd like to know what's going on, for you to open up to us," he said in a gentle but serious tone. She trembled slightly at his words and lowered her head. "Just thoughts," she replied evasively. "Since our mission." "It's been 2 weeks," Minato murmured, watching her closely. She avoided his gaze, feeling unable to meet his eyes. "I don't think you can help me," was all she said, sighing. "I don't want to talk about it." "All right, if you don't want to talk," he replied calmly. "But we're a team. We're here to support each other, and you're a valuable teammate and friend. We've shared important things, even secrets, with each other. I don't want to see you like this, feeling down." He was careful not to overstep, but he spoke his mind. She finally raised her eyes, surprised by his words. However, it only seemed to make her gloomier, as the thought of leaving the team was too painful. She didn't even seem to have control as tears started streaming down her face. "Sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. Minato watched her for a moment, his expression growing more serious. "Why, Makoto? What's going on?" "You know you can tell me," he insisted. "Sorry, but you can't help me. It's complicated," she murmured, tears now falling freely. Minato remained silent. Seeing his silence, she seemed even sadder. Deep down, she wanted to tell him, hoping he would have a solution, that he would say everything would be fine and find a way out. But that was just the voice of her heart. She knew Minato wasn't lying when he said they shared secrets. She remembered his strange powers, how he had helped awaken her Sharingan years ago, making her a prodigy. Now she was conflicted, perhaps even afraid of what was to come. If things went as her father planned, she would leave the team. Would she ever see them again? How many years would pass, and how rarely would that happen? These thoughts consumed her. "If you're this upset, I know it's because it hurts to think about leaving us," Minato's voice broke through her thoughts, his gaze fixed on the river, serious. She immediately lifted her head, staring at him with wide eyes as the tears continued to flow. "You know?" she asked in a low voice. "Yes, I know," Minato replied sincerely. "I happened to see that letter you received before the mission. I know your father wants you to leave the team after this war." She pressed her lips together, unsure of how to respond. "So, you know," was all she could say, repeating herself. "Yes, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to interfere. But I can't stay silent anymore, not when I see you like this," Minato said firmly. "How could I not be like this? I won't belong to this team anymore. Soon, I'll be gone, and after everything." Makoto murmured, her tears still falling. "Maybe we can change that." Minato responded in a serious tone, his blue eyes meeting the dark eyes of the Uchiha girl. Chapter 180, Makoto's Future 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. WHE. "Maybe we can change that," Minato spoke suddenly, catching Makoto off guard with his words as they echoed back to him. "What do you mean?" Makoto asked, looking at Minato, a bit surprised by what he had said. "Before that, let me ask you something. he said, pausing before continuing. Do you want this? Do you still want to be part of this team, even if it means going against your father? He asked seriously, gazing directly into her eyes. Makoto hesitated for a moment, staring back at Minato, unsure of what to say immediately. She felt her heart race nervously, as if it were speeding up. Yes, she said almost unconsciously. That's all I needed to know, he said, smiling. What do you mean by that? Makoto asked, intrigued. Leave it to me. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll make sure you stay on the team, he replied firmly. You don't understand. Minato. My father already said he made up his mind, Makoto said, her voice slightly raised. Do you think I'm afraid of the Uchiha clan? I'll face them all if I have to, Minato declared, leaving Makoto staring at him in slight shock. Minato! You can't be serious, she exclaimed, grabbing his arms, fearing he might do something reckless. Why not? I'll do it, Makoto. I won't let you slip away like this. I'll challenge the entire Uchiha clan if I have to, he said, maintaining his confident smile. You know you can't. She couldn't even finish her sentence, trying to make it clear for Minato not to do anything foolish. Stop saying I can't. You act like you don't trust me, Minato interrupted, taking her hands in his. I have a plan, he said. What do you mean by that? She asked suspiciously, still uncertain about what Minato was planning. I know your father doesn't like how close we become, he said calmly, as she began to blush. I don't know what you're talking about. She murmured, unable to meet Minato's eyes. You do. I have 2 fiancés, Minato said, still in a calm tone. I know that. I don't want to intrude on your relationships, Makoto murmured, visibly uncomfortable. Don't worry about that. In fact, I'm a selfish person, Minato remarked, and Makoto looked at him, confused. Then he continued. I want to know if, even with me having 2 fiancés, you still want to share your life with me, Minato said, looking at her as she froze in place. I want to have you with me. It might be selfish since I already have 2 fiancés, but I don't want to lose you, Minato admitted, wanting to keep her in his life as well. Makoto didn't say anything as her body began leaning forward almost unconsciously, and Minato looked a little surprised by her reaction. Minato. She murmured nervously. She had loved Minato for a long time, and now he had confessed to her, saying he wanted her and didn't want to see her marry someone else, even though he already had 2 future wives. Minato, kiss me, she whispered, moving closer to his face automatically. Minato was surprised by this development. He hadn't expected the Uchiha girl to react this way, but he didn't resist her movement and leaned in to meet her lips, kissing her for the first time in the next moment. Although he thought things had escalated in an unexpected way, he didn't mind and accepted Makoto's feelings he had always known she harbored for him but had never had the chance to discuss until now. They stayed there, lips locked, kissing for a while, undisturbed by anyone by the river. After 40 seconds, they slowly pulled apart. Minato looked at her reaction as Makoto blushed furiously, embarrassed, and pressed her lips together, wondering what he might be thinking of her. As she replayed the words he had spoken and his declaration that he wanted her in his life, her heart raced uncontrollably. It was this that had made her lean in and say those embarrassing words, simply wanting to kiss him for the first time. Internally, she still questioned. Could they really be together? Was it right for Minato to share his heart with other women? Would she be happy? Would her father accept this? Several questions began to unfold in Makoto's mind as she wondered what would happen next. Even so, deep down, she was happy despite everything. All she wanted now was to be with Minato. The consequences didn't matter, nor what she would have to disobey or sacrifice, even if it meant facing her father's disrespect and abandoning her clan. It was a strange thought since, as a ninja, she felt she was failing in that moment. But at the same time, she knew she was in love with Minato. And that spoke louder than anything else. Minato touched the side of her face gently. Makoto closed her eyes at the feel of his touch, letting out a soft sigh and placing her hand over his. I want to marry you, Makoto, Minato said calmly. Makoto didn't say anything, merely looking at him with a certain shyness, as if accepting his words. I want to fight for you. But I also need to know if you're willing to live the kind of life I want. Because, as I said before, I'm a selfish person, he said, pausing for a moment before continuing. Right now, my fiancées are Kushina and Tsunade, and they will be my future wives. I want to build a big family, and I can understand if you don't want this type of relationship. But I still wish for you to be part of it, he said with a sincere tone. He looked at her seriously. He wouldn't give up on the girl who had been by his side for so long. If he had to fight for her, Minato would. But he would also respect her decision if she didn't want to be by his side under the conditions he had. Makoto swallowed hard and replied, more emotional than she had ever been, I do, Minato. I know the idea of sharing you bothers me a little, but I also know I can't have your whole heart to myself. Even so, I still want to be with you. I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life by your side. But, will you face the entire clan for me? She let her heart speak but also felt a twinge of worry about Minato being in danger. I will do it. I'll challenge your father and your whole clan. Trust me, Minato said firmly. Have you told him yet? He paused and asked. Makoto sighed, visibly weighed down. I trust you, I'm just a little worried. She admitted, also concerned for Minato. That's enough. I'll take care of the rest, he said. You know, I have to meet my father first. She commented cautiously. Can you delay it? Minato asked. She shook her head. No, I have to meet him in the coming weeks. Then I'll go with you, Minato declared. Makoto froze for a moment, staring at him, before responding, even though she was happy to see how committed Minato was to her. No, this time, I'll go alone, she requested in a low voice. Are you sure? Minato narrowed his eyes, studying her expression. Yes, I'll handle this, Minato. Don't worry. This is something I need to do on my own, she finally said, and Minato eventually relented, though reluctantly. All right. Then I'll leave it to you, but I'll speak with your father personally as soon as I can, he said firmly. That's fine. I will. I want to have the courage to make my own decisions. And I've decided that I'm going to tell him that I'm going to marry you, she said as the two remained there, looking at each other. Minato's hand still rested on her face while Makoto placed her hand over his, sharing an intimate moment between the two for the first time. With a faint smile, Minato raised his other hand, placing it on the other side of Makoto's face as he drew her close again, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. I promise, Makoto. I'll give my all and do everything I can for us to be together, he said, as she felt his words touch her heart. After that, he let go of her face and grabbed the meal he had brought with him. Now, let's eat a little. I can't believe you turned down my food today, he said, smiling as he handed her a lunchbox. I'd never turn it down, but I wasn't in the mood for it, sorry, she murmured, looking at him. Minato responded with a small smile. Don't worry about it, he said. They began eating in silence, enjoying each other's company and savoring that peaceful moment. Do you think the girls will react badly when they find out you're interested in another woman? Makoto commented, almost casually, as she finished her meal. There was a tone of curiosity and even a bit of fear in her voice. Well, I already managed to convince Kushina about marrying Suna too, and Suna has always been open to the idea of having more than 2 wives, Minato replied, calm and composed. And to think I'll have to share a house with that Senju and see her every day. Makoto murmured, breaking into a smile at the joke she had just made. Most likely, Minato admitted with a smile, but that won't stop us from building a big family, he said with a calm demeanor. Speaking of that, how do you plan to make it all work, she asked, curious and genuinely interested in Minato's plans. I haven't told you, have I? I bought a piece of land in Konoha, and I plan to build a big house there. It's a huge property. A home for all of us and our children. The Namikaze clan. What do you think? He asked, jokingly but with a serious undertone behind the jest. Minato, that sounds very predictable coming from you, but it seems like an incredible idea. I didn't know you had already bought land. I'm excited to see it, she said, smiling brightly, clearly thrilled by the prospect. A comfortable silence settled between the two right after, as they looked at each other for a moment. Well, how about we head back now? I think Hanabi might be wondering what we're up to. And Due, well, he's probably studying his books, Minato said, standing up and extending his hand to her. Mikoto smiled. You're right. We'd better head back. She took his hand as he helped her up. And together, they began walking back to the camp. Mikoto felt her heart much lighter and happier than when she had first arrived there. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.